guys, Brett Weiss here. Welcome to another video. I'm super excited today to announce a brand new series. I'm going to be asking different personalities in the gaming community, different content creators, what their favorite game of all time is. And I've got 5 really awesome YouTubers set up today to answer that question, which you'll get to in just a minute here. But first, if you want to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel, I would greatly appreciate it. That would be awesome. And comment on this video that you have subscribed. That would be amazing. So 5 YouTubers that I reached out to are going to tell you what their favorite game is. And I'm going to do this for authors, for programmers, developers, and some other content creators as well. And I'm going to be just releasing these periodically as I get them in. But welcome to the very first of, so far, what I'm calling your favorite game. Without further ado, here are the favorite games picked by 5 awesome YouTubers, some of my favorite YouTubers. Check it out.
Hey guys, I'm Papa Pete, and Brett asked me to come on today to talk about what my favorite game is. And you know, it's always a challenging thing when somebody asks you what your favorite game is, because I think I've had different answers over the years for sure. And I have to go back and compare a lot of different things when I think about what it would be. Like for example, I can remember there was a stage where all I really wanted to play was sports games. And one of my absolute favorites at that time was Tecmo Super Bowl back in the late 80s, early 90s. Played that in university all the time because, of course, I was hanging around with a whole bunch of guys, and it just was the game that we could play tournaments. We set up playoffs and play tournaments, and it was what we played the most, and I absolutely love it. Still play it a lot to this day. And another one along the same lines is NHL 94, because I love playing hockey, grew up playing hockey. Being a Canadian, you gotta love hockey, right? And this was the absolute, in my mind, most fun, best simulation type with both the teams and the players in the NHL. But overall, you know, when I look back at my favorite game, I don't want to pick a sports game, and I'll tell you why. I don't want to pick a sports game because it's not something that you just could, yeah, you could play seasons yourself, and I have in both of these, but it's not something that you could really dedicate a whole lot of time to and adventure through, and there's a little hint to the situation. So what I really also liked and probably spent the most time of any gaming system was on role-playing games. And now the one I played the most time in my life is without a doubt Skyrim. I absolutely love this game because I love this genre. I love old Dungeons and Dragons games, and that's what I played when I was a kid. You know, I played Dungeons and Dragons back when it was, you know, pen and the books, and we used to get groups together and play it, and I just found it really interesting, and I'd read through all the books. So considering that was my favorite genre at the time, and I started off, my very first gaming system was an Atari 2600, and one of the very first games I got for it, and this is my absolute favorite game when I look back of all time, it's adventure. Yes, there are games in this role-playing genre that have so much more detail and have expanded upon it so much, obviously, but this was the very first one. This brought adventure gaming and Dungeons and Dragons type gaming from the imaginations and the pages of a book to actually on the screen, so you could play it live in actual multi-screen action. I still remember getting it when I was a kid, and it was phenomenal. It was absolutely crazy, the ability to play this game and to do the things that are in it. People look at it nowadays and go, well, what are you talking about? Because it really is so simple compared to everything we see. I mean, hello, right? But still, this when you think about your absolute favorite game in the world, you got to think about the things that you love, and you have to think about the nostalgia that goes along with it. And frankly, adventure, that has all those bases covered. Fantastic gameplay, a genre I love, and the nostalgia, because it was one of my very first games that I ever had for the Atari 2600 when I was a kid. Anyway, guys, thanks for asking me to share this with you today, Brett. I really enjoyed doing it, thinking back about my favorite games, something that changes from time to time. But you know, when you get right down to it and you think about it, you almost always go back to the roots, to the same old games that you've always loved your whole life.
Oh, my favorite game of all time. That is always a very difficult question. It used to be Super Mario 64 for a very long time. It was an incredibly important title for me because it was the game that kind of showed the broadcasters that I was talking to about EP how cool games were going to get. This 3D universe that was opening up for us. And of course, the Legend of Zelda game for Nintendo 64, both of them just were completely eye-opening. All of the wonderful work on the PlayStation, titles like Metal Gear Solid, and then later it was Grand Theft Auto 3. But in 2017, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild was released alongside the Nintendo Switch, and it was also on the Wii U. I never did play it on the Wii U, but I didn't stop playing it on the Nintendo Switch. In fact, the Switch, when it first launched, was the Breath of the Wild system. It was the Zelda system. I played it way too much, because I review so many games, I kind of have to move on after I know how I feel about stuff, but I could not stop playing that game. I played it with my great friend Johnny Millennium from Happy Console Gamer, but more importantly, sorry John, I played it with my daughter, and she was 5 years old at the time, and her eyes were like that, and she was guiding me to all kinds of cool places, destinations. She had suggestions for how to solve everything, and she was as invested in everything as I was, and I was completely transported, and I felt like it was my personal story. The idea that Nintendo had opened up the Zelda experience for every player to kind of chart their own destiny and their own path, and they could climb any mountain and go wherever the heck they wanted, and utilize all of these different items with true physics and beautiful properties, not to mention that kind of Miyazaki kind of infused art style. Absolutely gorgeous game. I have so many wonderful memories, and that compulsion to go back to it is very real, and I know even to this day, I would get lost in it if I stopped what I was doing, which is kind of like looking at everything that's coming out all the time and focusing on that. I could easily just lose myself in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. So Nintendo, I can't wait for the sequel, and it would be incredible if that was going to be a part of a new edition of the Nintendo Switch.
It was all for nothing.
Here it comes!
You must save her, my daughter.
Hi, my name's Adam Koralik, and I'm a YouTuber that goes by exactly that same name. I've been doing this for 12 years now, and it's a very common question: what is my favorite video game? Well, to be completely fair, a lot of people who watch my channel would already know the answer to that. It's the Shenmue franchise, specifically Shenmue 1, which I always keep right behind me. This is a signed copy by the creator, Yu Suzuki, as well as Corey Marshall, who is a friend of mine who voiced Ryo in the game, and even the Japanese counterpart, Masaya Matsukaze. Shenmue is my favorite video game of all time, specifically the second one, but I do like all three of those games, and that franchise I really consider as one whole piece. It was groundbreaking when it originally came out in 2000 in North America. And I've told the story on my channel before, but the funny thing is, I never really liked it initially. It took a couple of years before I played it again and realized, like, dude, this isn't just a game. Like, this is an experience. You're, like, living through this guy's life. You're, like, following the drama of it, and aspects of the gameplay are, like, riveting while also being oddly monotonous. And I know that's a really weird thing to say, but, like, part of what makes that game work is that you get engrossed into its universe because of the mundane. There's things you can do in it that are like totally pointless, like picking up an orange and looking at it, or just like getting a job, whatever. You think like, wow, this is kind of like weird and boring and stupid. Why am I doing this? And then you realize like that's the genius of it. Like you get so attached to this character's reality that when stuff really starts to happen to him, like you take it personally. And I know I'm not the only person that's felt that way. The Shenmue fan base in general is very much like that. And not only do I love it for all the things that it is, the gameplay, the story, the history of it, all that, but I love what it ended up doing into my life. Like I ended up becoming like connected with Sega through it, and they've had me involved to help with the re-release. They brought me out to Japan a couple of times to like go to where the game takes place and do tours and all this weird weird stuff that never really should have happened by just loving a video game, but it did. That's the power of video games and the power of fandom, is that if you really love something and embrace it that much, even when everyone else is telling you like, dude, I don't like that, I want to go play this game. You know, sometimes just being that odd guy who's like, I got slightly different tastes, just leads to weird things. And it's like a reciprocal relationship, man. It's like I loved something and then it loved me back, and that's like a perfect way of describing Shenmue. If you give it a chance, it will embrace you, and it'll just be like this awesome fusion. And that's really why I absolutely love the Shenmue franchise ever since it came out. And I absolutely am stoked about the possibility, and hopefully continued possibility, if you will, of a Shenmue 4. One day, maybe even Shenmue 5 if we play our cards right. But yeah, thank you very much, Brett, for having me involved with this. Keep being awesome and keep making your videos.
My father.
Leo, I want to hear more about you.
Hey, Chris, the old-ass retro gamer here, and I want to thank Brett Weiss for inviting me to participate in this collaboration video to talk about my favorite video game of all time, which is ActRaiser on the Super Nintendo. I have considered myself a massive fan of this game for decades, since it first came out, and why is that? Well, I wanted to have it back in the day because I read an article in an issue of Nintendo Power talking about how the music in the game by Yuzo Koshiro was like listening to a live symphony orchestra. And I've always been a fan of classical music, so that interested me almost immediately. And when I picked it up, I was like, yeah, they are right. It sounds amazing. I've never heard a game sound like this ever. It also had great graphics, gameplay, boss battles, effects, everything. It was, to me, a perfect game. But the reason I consider this my favorite game of all time isn't because of that alone. It is also because of the fact of its massive replayability. There are two distinct gameplay styles in here. Something like that I've never really seen before. One of them is a side-scrolling hack and slash, kind of like Castlevania, with a sword instead of a whip, and you have magic attacks and all that kind of stuff. It's awesome, it's fun, I love it. There's also a God Simulator mode that is presented between all of these side-scrolling levels, where you play as this angel who's an emissary of the god that you play as in the side-scrolling stages, and your job is to rebuild the world up from nothing. So the deity, main character of the game, has been missing from the world. He disappeared for millennia, and in the meantime, the villain Tanzra has wrecked everything. And the people are calling out for help, so now you have to rebuild the world for them to live in, build up the population, and as you do so, your power grows and grows and grows, and by the end of the game, your power is such that you can take on Tanzra face to face and eradicate him from the world. And it's the combination of the two gameplay styles that just really does it for me. All that combined with the awesome Yuzo Koshiro score that I mentioned earlier, and you have what I consider to be a virtually flawless game, which is why I consider it my favorite game ever.
力、勇気、戦い、愛、平和。アクションとクリエーションの見事なる融合。スーパーファミコンゲーム。アクトレイザー。
How you feeling? You got John Riggs here, and talking about my favorite game of all time. My go-to answer is Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, which I know is like, out of all the games, all the Zelda games, really, Zelda 2? That's the one you choose? Well, it came out during a time when Nintendo would take chances on everything. And just to see if it stuck, and nobody questioned it. You know, it would go from Super Mario Brothers to Super Mario Brothers 2, you know, in the Dreamscape world and all that, and people are like, yeah, okay, that's Mario 2, sure. You know, and so you had Legend of Zelda, fantastic game, still, that's also one of my favorites of all time. But you have the original Legend of Zelda, and then when Zelda 2 came out, which was like very different, very, very different, and nobody questioned it. It was like, yep, that's Zelda 2, all right. And I loved just the open world factor of it. I mean, I loved The Legend of Zelda. I mean, I grew up from the day, you know, I played a ton of Adventure for the Atari 2600, and I saw Legend of Zelda kind of being that next step up, and then Zelda 2. The fact that you can do still the 2D kind of platformy-esque, you got the 2D action part, and you're gaining levels and gaining experience, but it's not like a role-playing game. You know, it's not like, you know, like I hit you, then you hit me. You know, I can actually go through and fight my own fight, you know, by jumping and attacking. And you go to these towns, you learn new spells and all that. And I just, it was just such a fun experience for me playing that, especially when it first came out way back in the day. So my go-to answer, I'm telling you, Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. It's a game I used to play through and beat at least once a year. It's been a few years since I've done that though, so I'll have to do that. That'll be one of my resolutions for this year already. Go through that game. Maybe I'll do it this week. We'll see.
Now, I'd love to hear from you guys if you've got a cool, clever title for this series. Again, I'm just reaching out to different professionals in the community and different personalities in the community to tell me what their favorite game of all time is. Have some great ones lined up. And I'll probably do 5 each episode. I think that's a good, tidy amount. And so just let me know in the comments, what do you think I should call this new series? And who do you want to hear from? What content creators would you love to hear about their favorite game, for them to describe it and sort of tell you a little bit about the game, why they love it, and that kind of thing. Welcome to a brand new series. Please hit that subscribe button. It is super helpful. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for subscribing to the channel, and thank you for your comments. I really appreciate it. It was a really fun video for me to do. We will talk to you guys later.